lavish wedding of Juno Wilder turned into a tragedy when Maverick Langston sneered and called off the marriage amid a sea of flashing cameras. Amid the proud wreckage, Orion Sterling knelt, offering her a strange ring. What secrets lie behind the promise tomorrow is a new day? Will she withstand the storm? The crystal chandeliers in the Valmont Hotel's grand hall sparkled like a blade slicing through mist, casting light on Juno Wilder's pristine white wedding gown. With each step toward the altar, the scene seemed to slow. Rose petals fluttered down, her veil floated like wispy clouds, and rows of red velvet chairs bore the weight of curious gazes. A chill from the air conditioning swept through, carrying the held breaths of the guests. Everything was perfect, pristine, until Maverick Langston's faint smile shattered the stillness with a mocking laugh. That laugh wasn't born of nerves, but of a man reveling in control. "Sorry," Maverick's voice cut through the microphone, sharp and clear across 100 miles of silence. "I can't marry her. This marriage, it was just a business deal. I've already closed." The room reeled in gasps, the power play dissolving into thin air, leaving only the stunned bride, pierced by a blow to her core. The hall plunged into an abyss, whispers, camera clicks, and the quiet clatter of the microphone as Maverick dropped it and walked away. In that paralyzed moment, a figure flashed through the wings like lightning. Orion Sterling strode into the aisle, his black suit sharp and unyielding. Unfazed, unshaken, he scanned the scene once and commanded, "Stop." His voice, though soft, sliced through the chaos like a sword. Every lens swiveled to him, but Orion's eyes were fixed on Juno Wilder. He approached, his steps steady as fate, his breath sinking with the quickening pulse in her chest. "You don't deserve this humiliation," Orion said, each word sinking into the heavy air. With no wasted motion, he reached for Juno's hand in the aisle, as if declaring she wasn't a pawn to be traded. His gaze was gentle yet fierce, echoing words she'd once whispered to a man on the verge of giving up. "Tomorrow is a new day." Then he knelt, holding up a ring before hundreds of lenses, and asked, "Juno Wilder, if you'll allow me, I'll be the groom in place of anyone else." Applause erupted, but she didn't hear the praise. Her mind echoed only her heartbeat, stirring, trembling, urging her to respond. Amid the opulent yet bitter scene, she glimpsed a flicker of genuine hope, not from honeyed words, but from a selfless act of protection. In that moment, as she nodded faintly, the world seemed to pause and breathe. No one clapped, no one snapped photos. There were only two people, facing each other for the first time, choosing one another amid a sea of dazzling lights, and the first echo of that promise lingered. Tomorrow will be a new beginning. Stepping into Orion Sterling's penthouse, Juno Wilder felt as if she'd wandered into a skyborn palace where every detail was carved with the precision of an emotionless masterpiece. The glossy oak floor reflected radiant golden light. Italian leather armchairs sat like spacecraft anchored in a concrete sky, each stitch on the cushions a cold vein leading straight to a stranger's heart. Floor-to-ceiling glass windows gaped like the maw of the universe, drawing in the shimmering city lights below. Yet the more breathtaking the view, the more Juno felt the chasm between her and this place, a distance of 1,000 light-years. The space wasn't silent. The hum of air conditioning slipped through vents. Ambient instrumental music echoed faintly, but it was as desolate as a Martian sunset where humanity was absent and emotions were mere streams of cold plasma. She set her suitcase down, her steps slow, each one sinking into a soundless abyss. Orion Sterling stood at a distance, his sleek, captivating silhouette stark against his black suit. He didn't smile or offer a greeting, only a slight nod, his gaze fixed on the window. The space between them was heavier than the thick glass separating the interior from the myriad lights outside. The air in the room was dense, each of Juno's breaths like the last gasp of a lost wanderer. Yet she wasn't afraid. Her heart beat steadily like an hourglass, reminding her she was still alive amidst this proud, alien opulence. The first day passed in taut silence. Juno sat at a marble tea table staring at a gold clock without hands, its time marked only by cold etchings. Orion drifted by occasionally, like a fleeting breeze, leaving behind the scent of sandalwood and an empty, wordless trace. They were like two strangers in the first-class cabin of a skyward ship, avoiding eye contact and sidestepping unspoken questions. No words were exchanged, no warm glances shared, just a detached presence, like two spacecraft crossing the vast void without a single signal. At night, Juno found solace on the massive glass balcony, where the entire pulsing city lay within her view. The lights of the traffic below shimmered like a miniature galaxy, flickering aimlessly. Distant car horns wailed like the world's cries for help, while all she craved was a spark of warmth to ease her isolation. Wrapping herself in a light blanket, she leaned against the cool stainless steel railing, watching her hand tremble slightly, a hand that had once kneaded dough, once shaped a hunger for life, now foreign in this too-perfect space. Her heart sagged like an over-tightened string, yearning for a warm touch to coax out a tender note. But there was no one. Only the night breeze carrying mist and memories, a reminder that healing began in the depths of silence. In that solitary moment, Juno realized the penthouse wasn't just a physical height, but an invisible wall between two souls. Under the faint moon, she exhaled softly, letting her breath meld with the city's nocturnal pulse, whispering to herself, "Tomorrow, a new light will illuminate my own path." And however cold the present felt, she still had herself to face, to kindle an inner flame amidst that sea of crystal. Stepping out of Orion Sterling's penthouse as the doors slammed shut behind her, Juno Wilder felt like she was free-falling from a frigid glass cabin where every sound was merely an echo of her own mind. She didn't look back. Her steps quickened, her resolve stronger than ever. No longer bathed in the crystalline glow that illuminated every detail, she craved a space simple enough to breathe, warm enough to keep her heart from freezing. Leaving was like a knife slicing through invisible golden chains, freeing her from a gilded but suffocating net. Each step on the city's afternoon sidewalk brought the clamor of traffic, the laughter of carefree couples, and the faint scent of milkwood flowers, beckoning her back to memories of youth. As the door of the small bakery on Spring Street creaked open, Juno Wilder felt like she was reuniting with a long-lost friend. The oven still radiated warmth in the cozy kitchen, bathed in soft golden light. The old stove hummed, releasing waves of heat, and the aroma of flour mingled with butter wafted like a flood of memories. Her heels touched the worn tiled floor, etched with the marks of hurried mornings and quiet hopes for the future. Her heart lightened as she brushed her hand against the glass case filled with loaves, each one lined up like golden bars holding stories of hope. Free from the weight of ambition, she was just herself, a girl carrying a quiet passion for living authentically and nurturing her love for pastries. Under the warm light, Juno vowed to herself she would grind flour, mix yeast, and shape dough with her own hands. As her knife scored the dough, recalling the cuts of her life, she understood that breaking through old shells required a steady, forceful push. The oven's soft hiss was like the steady breath of a companion by her side. Dipping her fingers into the soft, pliable dough, she felt the pulse in her palms, the pulse of freedom. The scent of rising yeast filled the air, stinging her eyes, not from smoke, but from the sensation of being alive again, of reclaiming her path. When the vanilla cake emerged from the oven, its golden surface fragrant with a gentle sweetness, Juno exhaled deeply. She gazed at the cake, her creation, like seeing her dormant self hidden beneath blinding glamour. Past wounds dissolved like yeast transforming dough. All that remained was the clink of the bread basket, the oven's hum, and the steady rhythm of her heart. There were no flashing lights here, no whispered gossip, only the smell of butter, flour, and fresh hope. Placing the cake on the old iron rack, Juno gave a small smile. She knew the journey ahead was long, but she had rediscovered her starting point. The only place where she didn't have to perform, where she could simply breathe, live, and heal. Amid countless dazzling lights, nothing was more precious than the inner glow rising from her own ashes, granting her the right to return, to choose herself. And from here, each day would be a new melody, composed by her own hands. The storm of camera flashes engulfed Juno Wilder the moment she stepped out of the Spring Street bakery, her flour-dusted white apron suddenly a royal garment drawing every ravenous lens. The relentless clicks, the whispered captions scribbled in haste, and the flickering phone screens updating trends. CEO bride who shattered high society returns to the oven? PR stunt or bitter truth? The news spread like wildfire, flooding feeds, turning each of Juno's steps into a trek through a blaze of public scrutiny. Outside the shop, reporters loomed with microphones, their voices sharp. "Juno Wilder, are you using Orion Sterling's image to chase fame?" Their words cut like blades, slicing into wounds still raw. She offered a faint smile, head lowered, but her heart pounded, threatening to burst from a chest constricted by metallic pressure. The street morphed into a tragicomic catwalk, where every expression, every glance was magnified, dissected, and debated. Then a new figure emerged, a bodyguard sent by Orion Sterling. Tall and silent as a stone wall, he trailed her, his presence a fortress of security. As the glass door slid shut, he stood close to the curb, eyes lowered as if warding off threats. His arrival was a chess move, protecting her while binding her in a subtle ring of control. Each time she glanced back, the bodyguard's slight nod, permitting or forbidding, spoke louder than suppressed words. Amid the encircling crowd, Juno felt her breath tighten, more constricting than the flour-streaked apron. The blare of car horns, the shouts of news vendors, and the chime of phone notifications merged into a chaotic symphony, crashing into her ears like a suffocating dirge. She leaned against the bakery's uneven tiled wall, the cracks and crevices of shattered memories threatening to spill over, tears welling at the corners of her eyes. But she held them back, forcing a smile, whispering to herself, "He wants to protect me, but he's also caging me." Inside, the scent of yeast and freshly baked vanilla stirred memories of peace, rekindling the self she'd forgotten. Juno took a deep breath, vowing, "I have to break through this iron ring." She slowed her steps, each one a defiance of public opinion, of the gilded cage fame had built. In that chaotic moment, she knew, freedom didn't come from shelter, but from standing tall in the storm of media, asserting her worth beyond the reach of flashing lights or venomous comments. Flour dust still hung in the bakery's air as Juno Wilder bent over her 10th batch of the morning, sweat trickling down her brow, mingling with the rich scent of butter and brown sugar. The soft background music faded, overtaken by the oven's hiss, mirroring her own ragged breaths. Each time she lifted a tray of golden vanilla cakes, the weight of the world pressed on her slender shoulders. The media's tidal waves, the burden of being the CEO bride, and the distant too-perfect shadow of Orion Sterling. Her hands trembled, fingers clinging to the tray's edge, grasping at the last threads of a self that refused to shatter. But when the final cupcake box slipped from her grip, the sharp clatter echoed like a heart finally breaking under exhausted patience. She sank to her knees, clutching her thighs, staring at cake crumbs strewn across the old tiled floor, realizing the last drop had overflowed, her cup of enduring hope. The world blurred, and she awoke under the cold white light of an emergency room, the drip of IV fluid snapping her alert. Orion Sterling sat by her bed, his rigid posture stark amid the clatter of machines. For the first time, he wasn't the icy CEO, but a man adrift before the most vital person in his life. The light caught his face, etched with worry, brows furrowed, lips pressed tight, holding back a trembling sea of pain. No apology was needed, just a touch. His rough hand covered her frail one, and the world she knew was no longer solitary. The hospital night stretched endlessly, each moment a chain of memories rousing her from fleeting sleep. As dawn's faint glow seeped through the window, Orion rose silently, circling her bed as if to confirm her every sign of life. He stepped closer, his gaze tracing her flower-streaked hospital gown, then slipped his finger through a gap to feel her heartbeat. "Are you okay?" His voice quavered, a hushed, belated confession. She didn't answer immediately, only nodded, letting him believe his presence was shelter, not control. When she sat up, brushing away a tear, Orion pulled a chair close to the bed. The steady beep of the heart monitor blended with her gentle breaths, and in that moment the icy distance between them melted. Morning sunlight pierced the white curtains, casting a warm glow on her cheek, a reminder that even if the final drop overflowed the cup, breaking could open space for healing. In the quiet of the hospital room, amid steady breaths and tender glances, Juno Wilder knew her journey to reclaim herself had truly begun. In the silent stillness of the hospital room, a small paper box on the stainless steel table gleamed like a quiet crystal, holding a fragile thread of distant memory. Orion Sterling slowly lifted the lid, revealing a simple vanilla cupcake, its faint aroma stirring a dormant melody deep within his soul. For the first time in years, his steady hands trembled like a rickety bridge as they touched the rough brown paper, as if receiving a faded message. The room's cold fluorescent light mingled with the sweet vanilla scent, casting a surreal glow as the backdrop for a soft but weighty confession. He leaned toward Juno Wilder, his eyes sinking like a fathomless cliff, harboring pain dragged through endless nights. "This cupcake once saved me from the edge of despair." His voice quivered, echoing amid the steady beep of the heart monitor and the serene scent of stillness. Memories surged like icy underground currents breaking free, recalling a winter night when he nearly surrendered on subway tracks. "A stranger girl placed this cupcake before me and whispered, 'Tomorrow is a new day,'" he recounted, his voice low like gravel, grinding into the heart. The thread of the past stretched fiercely in Juno Wilder's chest, revealing she had once planted hope in a shattered soul. A faint smile bloomed on her lips, the first sign of a crimson dawn after a dark storm. Juno gently touched the box's lid, as if sealing the fragile thread into a resilient bond, linking two once separated spirits. In that silent moment, their hearts beat in unison, transforming the past from a shackle into a glue for healing. Orion didn't eat the cupcake. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply to soak in the warmth of being reborn from ashes. Juno looked at him, her gaze brimming with compassion, soothing old scars she'd quietly borne for years. The thread of the past wove into a delicate tapestry, guiding them back to their truest selves, unburdened by fame or rivalry. As the hospital lights softened, their shadows on the wall formed a vow. Undying hope could sprout from the deepest wounds. The gala night bathed the grand hall in a cascade of artificial meteors, crystal chandeliers scattering light across sleek tuxedos and opulent gowns, crafting a splendor that could eclipse the gentle strains of music. Suddenly, like a black arrow piercing a starry sky, Maverick Langston's footsteps echoed on the stage. He didn't present an award. Instead, he snatched the microphone from the MC with a sardonic smile, sharp as a dagger to the heart. His gaze swept the room, locking onto Juno Wilder as flashes erupted, capturing her frozen amidst a sea of startled applause. In an instant, the atmosphere detonated. Claps turned to furious fireworks, whispers sharpened into spears of public judgment, ready to crush anything fragile. Then Maverick spoke, his voice low and cutting, like a great saw tearing into Juno's honor. "Remarkable how swiftly you went from a lavish altar to a common baker. PR stunt or a nature long nurtured." His mocking laugh wasn't shy, but a calculated assault, laced with refined cruelty, a cold diamond piercing a heart, leaving a bleeding wound. Each word he uttered hung in the air like a sword slashing through, shaking an already volatile ambiance. Yet Juno didn't crumble. In that moment of tears and bitterness, Her heart thrummed like a bronze drum, awakening a strength she thought buried. Stepping out of the blinding spotlight, she sought the narrow hallway, where old fire extinguishers etched a desolate contrast to the hall's false grandeur. There, Orion Sterling, his familiar presence shadowing her every step, appeared silently. He didn't rush to refute the attack, only placed his hands on her shoulders, a warm blanket against the chill, softening her heart. But his silence bore a gnawing guilt. Why hadn't he stopped the blade aimed at her? In the hallway they faced each other like warriors under the gala's glow. Their weapons not swords or spears, but eyes and words. Juno drew a deep breath, letting each exhale sweep away the gala's venomous echoes, then fixed her gaze on Orion, her voice ringing clear as a bell. "When you stay silent before slander, whose side are you on?" The question hung in the stifling air, the lights seeming to pause, the music fading, leaving only the erratic beat of their hearts. In that moment, Juno's challenge wasn't mere retaliation, but a declaration. She wouldn't let silence be a tattered cloak for anyone. And when Orion finally nodded, slight but enough to earn her trust, the hall's lights flared anew, like a fresh backdrop, promising a partnership to uphold faith and justice, to be written under an uncompromising spotlight. As the penthouse door slammed shut behind her, Juno Wilder felt like a bird shedding crystal chains, plummeting freely onto the city's bustling sidewalk. She didn't look back. Her silhouette etched on the dark glass like bold ink against an icy fortress. Each step carried her further from the room of meticulous stitches, resounding like a drum heralding a new journey. A pilgrimage of a soul refusing to yield. Under the street's golden lights, her heels clicked against the curb, a challenge to anyone daring to block her path to freedom. The next day, Juno returned to her simple world. A worn apron, a kitchen fragrant with flour and butter. She carried only one item in her luggage, a vanilla cupcake box, its fresh-baked sweetness a final message to the man who once gave her, "Tomorrow is a new day." The box, wordless, was tied with a thin rope like an inked letter. Before leaving the apartment, she placed it on the marble table under the sunset's glow through white curtains, a beacon for a lost soul. Orion Sterling returned from a long meeting, his steps hollow like a specter in the frigid space. Opening the door, the lavish penthouse was now an empty chest. The Italian leather chairs no longer beckoned, the glossy oak floor reflected no vibrant life. He stood amid towering walls, hearing the echoes of his own soul, absent footsteps, the air conditioner's hum, and his heart's icy throb. As dim light fell on the marble table, he touched the cupcake box. Strangely, its vanilla scent lingered, a call back to a moment long past. Beneath the rough paper, he found a small note, no explanation, just 3 words: tomorrow. A sentence left unfinished, awaiting completion. His hand trembled, pressing the box close to his chest, as if embracing a memory. The apartment grew silent, like an ocean ceiling shut after a storm. He didn't play music or reach for his phone. Each passing second was a wordless dialogue with himself. In that contracting space, Orion realized love wasn't a grand garden for display, but a humble home where 2 souls sought refuge. Night wrapped the city's lights outside, yet in the darkness, the cupcake box remained, a mark of a choice and an enduring vow. Amid the bustling streets, he silently swore to preserve that warmth until the light at the corridor's end shone again. In the cozy warmth of a small cafe, Juno Wilder stood before an old wooden table, armed only with a microphone and a soft golden light, like a flickering candle in the dark, unassuming yet potent enough to warm hearts still encased in ice. Before her sat a modest row of chairs for a dozen carefully chosen journalists. Behind her, a weathered bookshelf and rough brick wall evoked memories of her early mornings in the world of bread-making. Juno gazed at the expectant eyes, feeling for the first time not the weight of being a bride, but the power of being a creator, a guide for shattered lives. She took a deep breath, her words flowing like a warm stream breaking through stone, not ornate but sincere enough to touch the depths of pain. One new day isn't about grand titles, it's about a hand extended in the abyss, so every woman after a fall knows she's still worthy of love. Her voice rang like a battle drum, each love a vibrant heartbeat, transforming the seemingly barren space into a blooming spring garden. Under the dim light, Juno shared the journey of turning House No. 12 into a sanctuary. From an old chair against the wall to a plush sofa corner, to a row of shelves holding self-help books, every detail chosen like pieces of a mosaic of empathy and hope. Each window became a wing of freedom, every conversation a seed planted in cracked hearts, ready to take root and sprout. When reporters asked about media pressure and PR stunt suspicions, Juno smiled faintly, like dawn's rays through a window. If this were a performance, I'd have worn a dazzling gown under a storm of flashes long ago. But I chose here, no stage lights, only inner glow, to prove love doesn't need lavish galas. Her words were a stone cast into a still lake, sending ripples far, compelling all to listen. As the talk ended, Juno descended the wooden stairs, clutching a stack of program applications, the first signs of women ready to start again. Her steps were unhurried, tracing a path for dawn to spread. For a moment she glanced back, her gaze tender for each old brick, each gray wall. There, a new day had found its voice, and though the world outside might still call her by old names, Juno Wilder knew she had found and given others strength to walk a self-chosen path. Stepping through the documentary production company's door, the camera lingered on Juno Wilder's warm crystalline eyes, her slender frame steadfast like a weathered bamboo enduring storms. In a quiet corner of the city, the old House No. 12, its brick walls once a backdrop to her pieced-together life, now glowed with the fresh sheen of a one new day sign in misty gold lettering. And the host's smile, radiant as dawn. The footage panned through wooden-floored corridors, past a scarred table bearing knife marks from her first vanilla cakes, a worn sofa etched with the footprints of nighttime wanderers, and a bookshelf where a torn diary lay open to her scrawled words. "I'm still alive." Soft golden light filtered through curtains, grazing her flushed cheeks, igniting a warmth of hope. The frame paused as her hands brushed a book's cover, as if touching the souls of those seeking salvation here. Juno Wilder's story wasn't a glittering fairy tale, but a weighty concerto, the whispers of women who'd fallen, the rueful laughter of those who'd lost themselves, and the hum of social media as she faced the camera, declaring, "I'm not a role model. I'm learning to love myself." Her voice rang like a cathedral bell, resonating through the lens to every corner of the screening room, where the audience erupted in emotion. The film flowed seamlessly to scenes of her and her team arranging chairs, folding applications from women emerging from the brink of emotional abuse, their eyes glinting with anticipation like birds yearning for a boundless sky. Far away on Venice's canal banks, Orion Sterling sat silently at a weathered wooden table, the fading dawn tinting the still water. The simple vanilla cupcake box, still wrapped in rough brown paper, held a sweetness on his fingertips, an odd trace of love yet to melt away. He gazed at the sunset's lonely reflection on the canal, strangely aware that the footprints on their old path weren't his alone, but a shared imprint, born of that first vanilla cake, the words, "Tomorrow is a new day," and a wordless handclasp. The film cut between these two souls, one vibrant with healing laughter, the other quiet amid the canal's gentle ripples. In closing, white text faded in on a black screen. In truth, every step on an old path carries the light of a new day. The auditorium lights flared, evoking Juno Wilder's journey from the icy penthouse through the bakery's smoky ovens to the healing house and the distant canal. Applause rose softly, not to glorify her, but to honor the brave footprints of a heart that chose freedom and true love. The story of Juno Wilder has touched our hearts, sparked hope, and taught us how to stand up after a fall. Her journey through Maverick Langston's cruel darkness to find the light in Orion Sterling's promise is truly moving. Thank you for watching Millionaire and Heart Stories.